We're going to ask at the end of this case that you find Mr. Chauvin guilty for his excessive use of force against George Floyd that was an assault that contributed to taking his life, and for engaging in eminently dangerous behavior, putting the knee on the neck, the knee on the back for 9 minutes and 29 seconds without regard for Mr. Floyd's life. We're going to ask that you find him guilty of murder in the second degree, murder in the third degree, and second-degree manslaughter.
And you will learn that Derek Chauvin did exactly what he had been trained to do over the course of his 19-year career. The use of force is not attractive, but it is a necessary component of policing. During this trial, you will hear evidence of what happened in the Mercedes-Benz in the 20 to 30 minutes prior to the police arriving. You will hear from Mr. Floyd's friends, Shawanda Hill and Maurice Hall. This will include evidence that while they were in the car, Mr. Floyd consumed what were thought to be 2 Percocet pills. Mr. Floyd's friends will explain that Mr. Floyd fell asleep in the car and that they couldn't wake him up, that they kept trying to wake him up to get going, that they thought the police might be coming because now the store was coming out, and they kept trying to wake him up. And in fact, one of these friends called her daughter, Miss Hill, Shawanda Hill, called her daughter, Shakira Prince, to come and pick her up because they couldn't keep Mr. Floyd awake. But when you review the actual evidence, and when you hear the law and apply reason and common sense, there will only be one just verdict, and that is to find Mr. Chauvin not guilty. In that statement, you said, like, I really wanted to beat the shit out of the police officers. You said that.
Yeah, I did. That's what I felt.
You were angry.
No, you can't paint me out as angry. I was in a position where I had to be controlled, of controlled professionalism. I wasn't angry because I stayed on the curb.
Object is non-responsive.
Overruled. Overruled.
Natural stand.
Next question.
Thank you. You started calling them names. Yes?
You heard that, yeah. You heard the
Right?
video.
You call him a tough guy, right?
You watched the video.
You call him a real man, right?
You watched the video.
Okay.
You do have to answer the question yes or no based on what he's asking.
I'm going to ask you that again, so your answers should be yes or no, okay?
Yes.
You called him a tough guy.
I did.
You called him a real man.
I did.
You called him such a man.
I did.
You called him bogus.
I did.
You called him a bum at least 13 times.
That's what you counted in the video?
That's what I counted.
And that's what you got, 13.
And that was early on, right? Those terms grew more and more angry. Would you agree with that?
They grew more and more pleading for life.
All right. After you called him a bum 13 times, you called him a fucking bum.
That's what you heard?
Did you say that?
Is that what you heard?
I'm asking you, sir.
I'm pretty
Did
sure
you
I
say
did.
that?
You heard that. I'm pretty sure you did.
You call him a fucking pussy-ass bitch.
If that's what you heard, I'm sure that's
I'm
what I did.
asking you, did you say that?
If that's what the video recalled, that's what I did.
You called him a bitch.
If that's the video you heard from the video,
It's
that's
a
what I
yes or
did.
no, sir.
If that's what was heard in the video, yes, I did.
And at one point, you said that Officer Tao pushed you.
That's correct. He didn't. He put his hand in my chest, is what I said.
And you observed Officer Tao push someone else, right? Or feel like he pushed someone else.
I didn't let him touch anyone else.
Do you recall saying, I dare you to touch me like that. I swear I'll slap the fuck out of both of you.
Yeah, I did. I meant it.
So again, sir, it's fair to say that you grew angrier and angrier.
No, I grew professional and professional, and I stayed in my body. You can't paint me out to be angry.
It's also fair to say that once you kind of came, you first talked to Officer Tao, and you said that you identified yourself as a Minneapolis firefighter, right? And Officer Tao asked you to step onto the curb, and you did that.
Correct.
Right? And you would agree that when you first arrived on scene, your own personal, I'm just talking about you personally, your own personal demeanor was much more calm.
Correct.
And as you were there between 8:26 and 8:30, so in about those 4 minutes, you would agree that your own demeanor got louder and more frustrated and upset.
Frustrated, I'm not sure is the word I would use.
Angry?
More desperate.
And you called the officers a bitch, right?
Yep. I got quite angry after Mr. Floyd was loaded into the ambulance, and there was no point in trying to reason with them anymore because they had just killed somebody. I don't know if you've seen anybody be killed, but it's upsetting.
Do you recall describing the crowd as a heavy crowd?
No, I don't recall.
Would it refresh your recollection to review the transcript of your statement?
I don't want to.
Okay. Would you dispute me if I told you that you told the agents it was a heavy crowd?
No, I guess not.
This conversation?
Yeah.
Did you describe Mr. Floyd as a small, slim man?
Overruled.
Yeah, it appeared to, with 3 grown men on top of somebody, it appeared that he was small and frail.
Okay.
Be seated. We are outside the hearing of the jury. Ms. Hanson, I'm advising you, do not argue with counsel, and specifically, do not argue with the court.
Is the cameras off? Are the cameras off?
No, they are not. We are on the record.
Okay.
You will not argue with the court. You will not argue with counsel. They have the right to ask questions. Your job is to answer them.
I was finishing my answer.
I will determine when your answer is done.
Okay, well,
And so, do not argue with the court. Do not argue with counsel. Answer the questions. Do not volunteer information that is not requested. The attorneys for the state have redirect. They can ask you questions if they think that certain things were left out.
okay.
It is counsel's prerogative to ask you leading questions and for you to answer those and not volunteer additional information.
Okay.
Are we clear on this?
We're clear.
Thank you. Come back tomorrow at 9:30.
All right. Good night.
Gave you notice?
Probably just his size. I could tell that he was big, so I noticed. Other than that, I just saw him as another customer that was coming to the
So
store.
you said it was his size?
Yeah.
He's a tall guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry
And,
about
yeah, did you actually interact with him in the store?
I did have one conversation with him.
And just not what was said, but what was the conversation generally about?
It was about, I asked him if he played football, or no, I asked him if he played baseball, and he said he played football.
And when you were, communicating with him, can you describe for the jurors, generally what his demeanor was like? What was his condition like?
So when I had asked him if he played baseball, he went on to respond to that, but it kind of took him a little long to get to what he was trying to say, so it would appear that he was high.
So you just had some signs that you thought he was under the influence of something?
Yes.
All right. But were you able to carry on at least some conversation with him?
Yes.
And did you eventually sell him something?
Yes.
And that was what?
The cigarettes.
Okay. Now, And Mr. Martin, then at some point, does Mr. Floyd make his way to the tobacco counter to make a purchase with you?
Yes.
All right. So we'll see that coming up here in a minute or two. I will stop right here, please. Can you describe for the jurors and what we're seeing, what's going on there in that segment of the video?
That was when one of the coworkers kind of grabbed up the other coworker and brought him back inside, and I was just yelling like, chill out, chill out, chill out.
And so when his coworkers came to get the young man in the white T-shirt, he went with them back into the store.
Correct.
And you were following them?
Correct.
All right, so let's continue to run 33 then. Now I want to pause here for a moment, please. For the record, 82904, can you tell the jurors what happened, what you were doing here, I guess?
At this point, I think I was just kind of emotional, and I went to the African American that was standing there in the curb, and I was just like they're not gonna help him. This is what we have to deal with. So.
Okay.
Sustained.
Yeah,
To be stricken.
That's fine. So you had a conversation with another person standing there.
Correct.
And when you walked up there, we saw just before I stopped it, there was a young girl there in a green shirt. Did you see her when you were walking up there?
Correct.
You remember seeing her in the store earlier?
Correct.
Did you know who she was?
No.
And you remember being the cashier when she was in the store earlier?
Correct.
And then can we continue to run Exhibit 33, please? Now I'm going to pause here for a moment. The record should reflect 829:55. We saw you standing there with your hands on your head for a while, correct?
Correct.
What was going through your mind during that time period?
Disbelief and guilt.
Okay. Why guilt?
If I would have just not taken the bill, this could have been avoided.
You had had a pleasant interaction with Mr. Floyd.
Correct.
You were asking him about sports and things of that nature, right?
Correct.
And you formed the opinion that Mr. Floyd was under the influence of something.
Correct.
And you base that on sort of, I think you said, a delay in his speech and response, right?
Correct.
So you were unlike a conversation that we may be having right now, that's rapid, and if you asked him a question, there would be much more of a slowed or delayed response.
Correct.
And I believe in your interviews, you also indicated that he was having some trouble with certain words.
Correct. He was trying to form the words.
Right. So he was delayed in his speech, and you believed him to be under the influence of something.
Correct.
All right. And you were present when your coworker called 911?
Correct.
And do you recall him telling 911 that he appeared to be under the influence?
Correct.
Mama! Mama!
You're the best guy.
All right. Oh my God.
Now you go to jail.
I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this, man.
Please stop right here, please.
Mama, look.
Mr. McMahon, do you need a minute?
Oh my God.
When you're ready.
We'll just give you a moment, Mr. McMahon. I'm not sure if there's water for you as well. If you need a break to get some water, let me know, and we can take a break. May I approach, Your Honor? You may.
Thank you.
And then you reconnected sometime in March, right?
Yes.
And was there an incident in March that required Mr. Floyd to be hospitalized?
Yes.
And that was, can you describe for the jury what that incident was?
Which date are you speaking?
In March, when he was hospitalized?
There was we went to the hospital a couple of times in March.
Okay. He was hospitalized for a more extended period of time in March, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's the incident I'm talking
Okay.
about. Okay. I understand he went once because he had hurt his hand, like cut his hand on glass or something. And that was a shorter hospital stay?
Yes.
But then there was an extended hospital stay
yes.
in March. Can you describe for the jury what led up to that hospital stay?
Yes. Floyd, I went to go pick Floyd up from his house that night. I thought I was taking him to work. He wasn't feeling good. His stomach really hurt. He was doubled over in pain. Just wasn't feeling well, and he said he had to go to the hospital, so I took him straight to the hospital. We went to the ER, and they were checking him out in the ER, and it was getting late, and I had to get home to my son, so I left that Friday night.
You later learned that that was due to an overdose?
Yes.
Object, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge.
Overruled.
You spent several days with him at the hospital, correct?
Yes.
And did you learn what caused that overdose?
No.
At that time frame, did you learn that Mr. Floyd was taking anything other than opioids?
No.
You did not know that he had taken heroin at that time?
No.
Those same pills, you ultimately got some of those same pills from March or similar pills in May of 2020, correct?
We got pills in May that reminded me of the same feeling. I don't know if they were the same pills. I don't know where they came from.
Right, okay. So you had a second experience with those pills, right? Or a similar feeling to those pills?
I had a similar experience, yes.
Right. And that was approximately a week before Mr. Floyd's passing?
Yes.
And by similar experience, do you recall telling the FBI that when you had that, you felt like you were going to die?
I don't remember saying that, but I did see it in the transcript.
And is that how you felt, like you were going to die?
I don't remember feeling that way, no. I didn't recall even saying that.
After Mr. Floyd was hospitalized in March, you were quarantining together, spending a lot of time together in March, April, and May, correct?
Yes.
And for the majority of that time, Mr. Floyd was clean, right?
Yes.
And it was your belief that Mr. Floyd started using again about 2 weeks prior to his death, correct?
I noticed a change in his behavior, yes.
That's when you noticed the changes in his behavior.
Are there different kinds of force that officers can use?
Yes.
And have you ever, in all the years you've been working for the Minneapolis Police Department, been trained to kneel on the neck of someone who is handcuffed behind their back in a prone position?
No, I haven't.
Is that, if that were done, would that be considered force?
Absolutely.
What level of force might that be?
That would be the top tier, the deadly force.
Why?
Because of the fact that if your knee is on a person's neck, that can kill him.
What is your, your view of that use of force during that time period?
Totally unnecessary.
What do you mean?
Well, first of all, pulling him down to the ground, face down, and putting your knee on a neck for that amount of time is just uncalled for. I saw no reason why the officers felt they were in danger, if that's what they felt. And that's what they would have to feel to be able to use that kind of force.
Stop. New question.
So in your opinion, should that restraint have stopped once he was handcuffed and prone on the ground?
Absolutely.
Now, you testified that you were never, you have never been trained as a Minneapolis police officer to use a knee on the neck of a suspect.
That's correct.
You would agree, however, that in a fight for your life, generally speaking, in a fight for your life, you as an officer are allowed to use whatever force is reasonable and necessary, correct?
Yes.
And that can even involve improvisation, agreed?
Yes.
Minneapolis Police Department policy allows a police officer to use whatever means are available to him to protect himself and others, right?
Yes.
So if there's a paint can sitting on the table and someone is attacking, you can use that paint can as a weapon.
Yes.
And in fact, you have been trained in the prone handcuffing techniques, correct?
Yes.
And it's your testimony that Minneapolis Police Department has never ever trained anyone to put their knee across the shoulder and to the base of the neck?
I didn't say that.
Okay.